Shalom, welcome back to the Book of Enoch series. The very first chapter of 1 Enoch does something important before it gives us fallen angels, giants, heavenly chambers, or hidden mysteries. It begins with a blessing. That is not a small detail. The book does not first invite us to be fascinated. It does not first invite us to speculate. It first places a blessing over people who will have to remain righteous in a time of tribulation. The opening words identify them as the righteous chosen. They will be present when distress reaches its appointed height, when hostile powers are removed, and when the righteous are saved. So, the first sound in 1 Enoch is not the sound of fear. It is the sound of blessing spoken before the storm. And that tells us how this whole chapter should be heard. A blessing does not always mean that hardship will be prevented. Sometimes a blessing is given because hardship will come. It becomes a word placed inside a person before circumstances attempt to define that person. It says that suffering will not have the authority to name you. Your enemies will not have the authority to tell you who you are. The age around you will not have the final word over the life within you. The righteous chosen are not described as people who never enter tribulation. They are people whom God remembers within it. That distinction matters. Many of us imagine divine favor as exemption. We think that if God is with us, then the difficult season should disappear. But 1 Enoch opens with another kind of assurance. The righteous may stand inside a troubled age, yet the troubled age does not stand outside the knowledge of God. The blessing comes first because heaven has already interpreted the moment differently from the way fear interprets it. Fear says everything is collapsing. The blessing says what is false is being brought to its limit. Fear says the violent are untouchable. The blessing says their power has an end. Fear says the righteous have been forgotten. The blessing says they are known, protected, and held. But we must also be careful with the word chosen. In a spiritual text, chosen can easily become food for the ego. A person can hear it and immediately imagine being superior, specially informed, or separated from everyone else by secret status. That is not the posture of this chapter. The chosen are joined to righteousness. The word is not a trophy, it is a calling. They are not chosen so they may admire themselves. They are chosen so they may remain faithful when unfaithfulness becomes normal. They are chosen so that violence does not reproduce itself through them. They are chosen so that the spirit of the age does not become the spirit of their heart. The blessing, therefore, carries responsibility. To receive protection from evil while secretly loving evil would be a contradiction. To ask for vindication while speaking the same proud and hard words condemned in the chapter would be self-deception. Then Enoch speaks about the source of his message. He presents himself as a righteous man whose eyes were opened by God. He says that he saw a vision of the Holy One in heaven. He heard from the watchers and the holy ones, and he understood what he saw. There are three movements here: seeing, hearing, and understanding. Seeing alone is not enough. A person can witness something powerful and misunderstand it. A person can receive an image and force it into an old belief. A person can encounter mystery and immediately turn mystery into ego. Enoch does not merely say, "I saw." He also says, in effect, "I listened," and "I came to understand." Revelation requires an open eye, but it also requires a listening heart. An understanding is not the same as collecting unusual information. Understanding means perceiving the moral meaning of what has been revealed. The true seer is not the person who can describe the most extraordinary vision. The true seer is the person whose vision makes truth more unavoidable. That is why Enoch's revelation immediately becomes an oracle of judgment. The hidden world is unveiled so that the visible world can be measured rightly. Enoch then says that he is not explaining these things for his own generation. He is speaking about a distant generation. This is one of the most beautiful ideas in the chapter. A word can be given long before the people who need it are born. God can prepare consolation before the sorrow arrives. God can preserve a warning before the danger becomes visible. God can place a lamp in history and allow it to wait until a generation enters the darkness for which that lamp was prepared. The distant generation is not told merely that something dramatic will happen. It is told how to understand what happens. That is the gift of revelation. It does not always remove us from history. It teaches us how to stand inside history without surrendering our soul to its confusion. Then the vision opens. The great Holy One comes forth from his dwelling. The eternal God descends upon Mount Sinai, accompanied by a mighty heavenly host. The choice of Sinai is deeply meaningful. Sinai is the place of revelation, covenant, command, and holy order. So the coming of God in 1 Enoch is not random destruction. It is the arrival of the one whose presence reveals whether creation is aligned with its purpose. At Sinai, divine instruction entered history. Here, the God of Sinai comes again, and everything that has resisted divine order can no longer hide behind appearances. The introduction to this translation notes that the opening oracle draws from Moses' final blessing in Deuteronomy and from the oracle of Balaam in Numbers. In other words, 1 Enoch is not trying to create a God different from the God of Israel's scriptures. It gathers older biblical language and directs it toward a generation facing a new form of disorder. That matters because apocalyptic revelation does not abandon covenant. It intensifies covenant. The God who once came in holiness is still holy. The God who gave order is still able to judge disorder. The God who blessed his people is still able to preserve a people who refuse to let violence rewrite them. And notice that God comes with a host from the heaven of heavens. This is not a struggle between equal powers, as though heaven is uncertain about the outcome. The holy ones do not rescue God. They accompany his appearing. Evil may be terrifying within history, but it is never presented as eternal, self-existent, or equal to the Creator. Its influence can spread. Its consequences can become enormous, but its authority remains borrowed, limited, and answerable before divine truth. The watchers fear. Those concealed at the ends of the earth tremble. The earth shakes. High mountains fall apart. Hills are lowered. What appeared permanent melts like wax before fire. This is apocalyptic language, but it is not empty spectacle. Mountains represent what human beings experience as immovable. Empires feel like mountains. Systems of violence feel like mountains. Wealth, protected by power, feels like a mountain. An identity built over many years can feel like a mountain. Even a wound can become so familiar that it feels permanent. Yet, before the presence of the eternal, permanence belongs only to God. The mountain is not ultimate merely because it is high. The structure is not righteous merely because it is old. The ruler is not secure merely because people fear him. The lie is not true merely because generations have repeated it. When the Holy One comes forth, false permanence dissolves. And this is why the chapter can sound terrifying and hopeful at the same time. It is terrifying to everything that depends upon concealment. It is hopeful to everyone whose suffering has been concealed. The earth is torn open, and judgment comes upon all. The wicked are destroyed, and humanity is convicted concerning wicked deeds and the proud, hard words spoken against God. Notice that the chapter remembers both deeds and words. We often treat speech as though it disappears after it leaves the mouth. But words shape worlds. Proud words teach the heart to resist correction. Hard words make cruelty sound reasonable. Repeated words can normalize contempt, prepare violence, and turn another human being into an object. The judgment of God reaches not only what hands have done, but what the mouth has served. This should make us pause before using this chapter only against other people. It is easy to imagine the wicked as a group safely outside ourselves. It is harder to let the text examine our own hidden loyalties, our own proud speech, our own appetite for vindication, and the hardness we excuse because we believe our cause is right. The coming presence does not ask which side used the holiest language. It reveals what every side has become. But then the chapter turns, and the turning is radiant. With the righteous, God makes peace. Over the chosen, there is protection. Upon them, there is mercy. They belong to God. He grants them His good pleasure. He blesses them, helps them, and causes light to shine upon them. This is the inner center of the chapter. The same presence that shakes the mountains makes peace with the righteous. The same light that exposes wickedness becomes light upon the chosen. The same judgment that ends oppression becomes mercy for those who endured it without becoming its image. Judgment and mercy are not competing personalities in God. They are two effects of truth arriving fully. To falsehood, truth feels like collapse. To the oppressed, truth feels like vindication. To pride, light feels unbearable. To the righteous, light feels like home. A person may begin to think, I belong to this fear. I belong to this wound. I belong to what was done to me. I belong to the judgment of other people. But the chapter answers with a deeper belonging. You are not finally owned by the age that troubles you. You are not finally possessed by the enemy that opposes you. The righteous belong to God, and because they belong to God, suffering cannot become their ultimate identity. This belonging is not passive. It draws the person into alignment. If I belong to God, then my speech must become truthful. My power must become accountable. My hidden life must become inhabitable by light. My hope cannot depend upon another person's destruction. My righteousness cannot be only a name I give myself. The chapter ends with the Holy One coming with myriads of holy ones to execute judgment, remove wickedness, and expose every deed and every hard word. But the final spiritual question is not, when will God destroy the people I dislike? The final question is, what in me can stand in the light of that presence? What pride must melt? What false refuge must fall? What hard word must be withdrawn? What hidden deed must be brought into truth? And what part of me still needs to learn that mercy is not weakness, peace is not passivity, and righteousness is not self-congratulation? 1 Enoch begins by telling the distant generation that history is not abandoned. Heaven is not indifferent. The hidden deed is not lost. Violence is not eternal. The righteous are not forgotten. And the coming of God is not merely the end of something evil. It is the restoration of peace, protection, mercy, belonging, blessing, help, and light. The blessing comes before the shaking. That may be the chapter's first great wisdom. Before the mountain melts, a word has already been spoken over the righteous. Before the age reaches its crisis, heaven has already remembered them. Before fear announces that everything is ending, God has already declared what will remain. Shalom.